하이 데어. 오늘은 해리포터의 첫 번째 책의 첫 번째 챕터 1 The Boy Who Lived를 함께 읽을 시간이에요. 네, 해리포터는 굉장히 유명한 책이죠. 전 세계적으로 5억 권 이상 팔렸다고 알려져 있는데요. 네, 정말 대단한 책인데 드디어 완결이 된 지도 꽤 오랜 시간이 지났고 발간된 지 20년이 지나서 번역본도, 한글 번역본도 재번역이 될 정도로 해리포터의 역사가 깊고 또 인기 또한 여전한데요. 정말 이 책을 함께 읽을 수 있는 여러분들과 저와 즐거운 시간이 될 것 같아요. 네, 저 또한 여러분들 덕분에 끝까지 한번 읽어볼 계획이에요. 해리포터하고 첫 번째 책은 뭐죠? 마법사의 돌이라고 하는데요. 영국판은 Philosopher's Stone이라고 나오고 미국판은 Sorcerer's Stone이라고 나와요. 제가 읽을 텍스트의 그 기준이 되는 것은요. 미국판이 될 것 같아요. 제가 영국판을 소장하고 있는데 네, 네, 읽게 될 때는 그 대본은 미국판의 책을 가지고 읽을 예정이에요. 그러니까 조금 영국판하고 미국판하고 차이는 있어요. J.K. 작가님이 영국 사람이시고 영국에서 출판된 책이기 때문에 영어 책이 원본이 되겠죠. 그리고 미국 버전은 번역을 한 거겠죠, 영어로. 그런데 우리는 해리포터의 재미난 흥미진진한 이야기도 궁금하지만 또 영어 공부를 할 목적이 있기 때문에 네, 이 영상을 촬영할 때는 영국판이 아니라 미국판으로 함께 공부할 생각이에요. 네, 그럼 함께 읽어볼까요? Chapter 1 The Boy Who Lived. 네, 챕터 1의 첫 번째 문장 보면 Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. 이렇게 시작되죠. 네, 정말 첫 번째 문장이에요. 첫 번째 문장인데 이걸 한글 번역으로 제대로 하지 못해서 첫 번째 초판 번역본에서는 Thank you very much를 아예 번역을 하지 못한 거예요. 그러면 J.K. 작가님의 그 의도를 좀 무시한 거죠. 작가님이 첫 책에, 시리즈의 첫 번째 책에, 첫 번째 챕터에, 첫 번째 문장에 무려 4단어나 되는데 이걸 아무 의미 없이 쓰진 않으셨을 거 아니에요. 그런데 갑자기 웬 생뚱맞게 땡큐 베리 머치야? 감사합니다. 이게 왜 나와? 라고 해서 처음에는 이제 번역을 하지 않았어요. 20년이 지나서 이제 시리즈가 다 완결이 됐고 또 첫 책이 출간된 지 20년이 지나서 20주년, 20 애니버서리 해가지고 20주년 에디션으로 나온 것에서는 한글 해석이 됐다고 해요. 그럼 이만이라고 해석을 했다고 하네요. 이게 무슨 의미냐면요. 이제 첫 문장이니까 길게 설명해 볼게요. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley 부부죠. Mr. and Mrs. 영미권에서는 결혼을 하면 성씨가 통합이 되죠. 남편의 성씨에 맞춰서 변하는 거예요. 그래서 결혼을 여러 번 하면 여성의 경우 성씨가 계속 바뀌는 거예요. J.K. 작가님도 조앤 작가님도 원래 롤링이었잖아요. 이 책을 낼 때 J.K. 롤링이라고 했는데요. 물론 K는 없는 이름이고 그냥 지어낸 이름이에요. 조앤 롤링이라고만 해야 되는데 이 책이 남학생들이 재밌게 읽을 것 같은 그런 타겟 독자인데 작가님이 여자야? 여자 작가야? 라고 하면서 무시를 받을까봐 일부러 출판사에서 조앤이라고 하지 않고 J라고 했대요. 근데 J 롤링 좀 이상하잖아요. 그래서 원래 영미권에서는 미들 네임이 대체로 있어요. 그래서 가운데 이름이 물론 이제 없는 사람도 있고 조앤 작가님도 없었죠. 그래서 할머니 캐서린의 K를 따서 J.K. 롤링이라고 이제 출판을 시작했어요. J.K. 롤링만 봐서는 남자 작가인지 여자 작가인지 확인이 안 되잖아요. 네, 그렇게 했대요. 그런데 롤링 작가님 지금 다시 결혼을 다시 하셨죠. 그래서 남편 성씨에 따라서 지금은 조앤 롤링이 아니라 조앤 마이어인가? 네, 남편분 성에 맞춰서 바뀌었어요. 우리나라는 결혼을 하든 안 하든 네, 여성의 이름의 성씨가 그대로 있는데 뭐 좋은 건지 뭐 그게 꼭 반드시 부부 평등을 보장한다고 할 수는 없지만요. 이름이 계속 바뀌는 건 좀 난감할 것 같긴 해요. 미스터 앤 미시즈 하면 부부라는 뜻이죠. 더즐리 부부, 그러니까 더즐리 성씨인가 봐요. 남편의 성이 더즐리인가 봐요. 네, 사실 버논 더즐리시죠. 그래서 더즐리 부부는 넘버 4, 4번가에 살아요. 프리빗 드라이브라는 곳에. 그런데 were proud to, 굉장히 be proud of, be proud to 부정사가 나오는데요. 자랑스럽다, 자랑스럽게 여기다 이런 뜻이에요. 뭐가 자랑스럽냐면요. say that, 뭐라고 말하면서 자랑스러워하는 거예요. 말하는 내용은 They are perfectly normal, thank you very much. 그들이 perfectly, 완벽하게 normal, 정상이야. 우리는 normal이야, 평범해. 우리 완벽하게 평범해, thank you very much. 이렇게 말하면서 자랑스러워한다는 거예요. 이게 뭔 소리야. 진짜 좀 당황스럽긴 하죠. 그런데 영국에서는 이런 말을 한대요. 사실 우리나라도 그런 경우가 많죠. 계속 곤란한 질문을 계속 던지면 더 이상 대답하기 싫거나 대답하기 곤란할 때 뭐라고 얘기하죠? 네, 이제 그만 말하세요. 닥치세요. 이렇게 말할 수는 없잖아요. 네. 네, 고맙습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 이러면서 이제 자리를 뜨죠. 그런 것처럼 thank you very much. 이 말은 그럼 이만 가보겠습니다. 더 이상 할 말이 없습니다. 이런 의미로 받아들이면 되는 것 같아요. 그래서 미스터 앤 미시스 더즐리 부부가 우리는 정말 완벽하게 평범한 사람들이에요. Thank you very much. 이거는 그럼 이만, 더 이상 물어보지 마세요. 라는 뉘앙스로 이해하면 좋을 것 같아요. 우리말에서도, 우리나라에서도 그런 상황이 있잖아요. 네, 알겠습니다. 고맙습니다. 이러면서 자리를 뜨잖아요. 그런 것처럼 Thank you very much. 그럼 이만 가보겠습니다. 더 이상 할 말이 없네요. 라는 뜻이죠. 그러니까 우리 부부가 완벽하게 노멀하다라는 거, 그건 더 이상 말할 필요도 없다. 이런 느낌으로 이해하면 될 것 같아요. 네, 이 첫 문장 때문에 이 첫 문장을 해석을 똑바로 했네 못했네, 정말 대한민국 번역가의 번역 수준이 정말 처참하다, 막 이런 신문 기사도 실리곤 했더라고요. 그래서 첫 번째 문장 길게 설명해 봤어요. be proud of 하면 명사, 동명사를 써야 되고요. be proud to 부정사는 자랑스럽다 뜻은 같은데 be proud to가 나오면 동사 원형이 나온다는 차이점만 기억해 두세요. 그리고 또 the last man, the last people 이런 표현이 있는데요. 단어 그대로 해석을 하면 마지막 사람이란 뜻이죠. 정말 끝까지 마지막까지 남을 사람 이런 뜻이죠. 실제 의미는 전혀 무엇 하지 않을 사람이라는 거예요. 저 사람은 거짓말을 할 마지막 사람이야 라고 한다면 절대 거짓말 하지 않을 사람 이렇게 생각하면 돼요. The last man, the last people 이런 말 많이 나오거든요. 꼭 기억해 주세요. 그리고 띵으로 끝나는 명사에 이제 형용사 하나를 붙이고 싶어요. 왜 우리가 형용사가 명사를 꾸밀 때 아름다운 꽃 할 때 beautiful flower, flower라는 명사 앞에 beautiful 형용사를 붙이잖아요. 그런데 띵으로 끝나는 명사는 형용사 하나가 와도 형용사 단어 한 개를 뒤로 뺀다는 거예요. 어순을 주의해 주셔야 돼요. 영어는 순서의 언어니까요. 이 순서를 틀리면 문법적으로 와장창 틀린 게 되죠. Anything strange or mysterious 라고 이제 더즐리 부부 이야기에서 나오는데요. 더즐리 부부는 어떤 것도 이상한 그 어떤 것이나 또 mysterious, 신비한 어떤 것에도 연루되지 않는다 라는 표현이 나오는데요. 그때 anything 명사에 띵이 있기 때문에 형용사 strange하고 mysterious가 뒤에 가서 꾸며주고 있어요. something special 이건 뭔가요? something으로 끝나죠? 특별한 어떤 것. 정말 특별한 어떤 거를 선물해 줘야 될 텐데 오늘 생일인데 막 이렇게 한다면 something special 이라고 special something 하면 안 되고요. something special 이라고 뒤에서 꾸며줘야 돼요. 굉장히 유명한 양주에 이름이 something special이 있다고는 하던데 저는 뭐 본 적도 없고 마셔본 적도 없지만 굉장히 유명한 양주라고 하네요. something special 특별한 어떤 것. 어순 조심해 주세요. be involved in 무엇무엇에 관련되다 라는 뜻이고요. hold with는 무엇무엇에 동의하다. 우리가 hold 잡다 이런 뜻이잖아요. 근데 hold with는 동의하다예요. 이 hold 꽉 잡고 있어. 무엇에 꽉 잡고 있어. 이거를 동의하다라고 해석을 해야 되는데 한글 첫 번째 번역판에서도 참다 이렇게 됐었나? 좀 번역이 잘못된 것 같아요. 그래서 우리가 해리포터 영화도 재밌게 보셨겠지만 우리가 해리포터 원서를 읽으면 정말 더 재밌거든요. 왜냐면 와 JK 작가님이 조앤 작가님이 역시 괜히 5억 권이 팔린 게 아니었어 라고 감탄할 만한 문장들이 엄청 많아요. 그래서 재밌게 읽으면서 영어 실력도 쑥쑥 올라가기에 딱 좋은 해리포터 함께 끝까지 읽어봐요. hold with는 동의하다라고 이해하셔야 되고요. 디렉터는 왜 디렉터, 감독, 관리자 이런 뜻이에요. 그리고 firm이라는 단어 많이 나오죠. 첫 번째 뜻 단단한 이런 뜻이 있고요. 두 번째 뜻은 회사라는 뜻이 있어요. 우리가 회사를 들어갈 때 단단한, 튼튼한 회사에 들어가야겠죠? 네, 우리가 단어를 외울 때 스토리텔링을 하거나 어떤 연상 기법을 이용하면 쉽게 외울 수 있고 오래오래 기억할 수 있거든요. firm, 단단한 회사. 단단한 회사. 그냥 아무렇게 막 외우는 것이 아니라 회사, 로펌이라고 하잖아요. 법률 회사, 로펌. 로펌이 이제 굉장히 단단한 좋은 회사여야죠. 회사라는 곳이 단단하고 좋은 곳이어야 된다. 이렇게 연결을 해서 1번 단단한, 2번 회사 이렇게 외우면 좀 쉽게 잊혀지지 않고 기억이 잘 나더라고요. 부정부사라고 했는데요. 부정문을 만드는 부사들이 있어요. 대표적으로 5개가 있어서 이것들을 꼭 기억해주면 좋아요. 물론 hardly를 제일 많이 써요. 우리가 hard 하면 열심히, 딱딱한 뭐 이렇게 아는데 hardly 하면 뭐지? 딱딱하게인가? 열심히인가? 이렇게 오해할 수 있는데요. hardly, rarely, barely, scarcely, seldom 하면 부정문을 만드는 부사예요. 거의 뭐뭐하지 않다라고 해서 실질적으로 긍정문이 아니라 부정문으로 이해하는 게 정확하게 이해하는 거거든요. hardly, rarely, barely, scarcely, seldom. 글을 쓴 작가가 의도하는 바가 이건 부정문으로 이해하렴 이라고 할 때 쓰는 대표적인 5가지 부사예요. 큰소리로 한번 따라 해볼까요? hardly, rarely, barely, scarcely, seldom. 그리고 하나 더 알아두면 좋은 게 a few, a little 이게 a few는 셀 수 있는 명사랑 쓰고 a little은 셀 수 없는 명사랑 쓴다. 뭐 이런 거 배웠을 거예요. 하지만 a few 하면 약간, a little 약간 이런 뜻이잖아요. 그런데 어가 없는 few나 little만 나올 때는 이것도 마찬가지로 부정문을 만들어 버려요. 그래서 few나 little, A가 빠진 채 few나 little이 있으면 이거 부정문이야 라고 이해하셔야 돼요. 꼭 기억해 주세요. near, 가까운이죠. 그런데 nearly는 가깝게 뭐 이런 뜻이 아니에요. nearly는 거의 라는 뜻으로 많이 쓰여요. near, 가까운, nearly, 거의. spend, spent, spent. spend, spent, spend. 시간이나 돈, 에너지 같은 것을 사용한다 이런 뜻이에요. spend, spent, spend. 3단 변화도 기억해 주시면 좋겠죠? 그리고 우리가 건설 현장에서 굉장히 높이 올라가 있는 거 있죠? 크레인이란 말 많이 들었을 거예요. 크레인이 영어인데요. 영어로 크레인이 기중기라는 그런 건설 장비를 뜻하기도 하고요. 원래 크레인의 뜻은 두루미, 새 중에 목이 엄청 긴 새 있잖아요. 그런 아이들을 크레인이라고 해요. 그 크레인, 두루미, 학을 보면 목이 길죠. 그래서 동사로 쓸 때는 목을 길게 빼고 보다, 목을 길게 뺀다 이런 뜻이 있어요. 우리 더즐리 부인이 남의 집을 염탐하려고 실제로 목이 매우 길기도 하고 목을 길게 빼고 주변을 막 둘러보는 장면이 묘사되어 있죠. 네, 그리고 bear의 뜻 3가지 꼭 기억해 주셔야 돼요. bear. 우리 테디베어, 곰인형 생각하기 쉬운데요. 맞아요. 곰이라는 뜻도 있고요. 2번 뜻은 참다, 견디다. 3번째 뜻은 낳다, 출산하다라는 뜻이에요. 낳다, 출산하다, 참다, 견디다. 동사로 쓰일 때는 3단 변화가 있겠죠. bear, burr, bone. 한번 따라해 볼까요? bear, burr, bone. bear, burr, bone. 참다, 견디다, 낫다, 출산하다의 뜻일 때 3단 변화까지 알아주시고요. 배어의 뜻 세 가지 뭐야 다 다르잖아. 어떻게 외워? 또 까먹는 거 아니야? 라고 하지 말고 네, 쉽게 외우는 방법 알려드릴게요. 곰이 참고 견뎌서 당군을 낳았다. 이런 스토리텔링을 만들면 쉽게 외워져요. 이게 무슨 말이냐면요. 당군 신화에서 곰하고 호랑이하고 사람이 되려고 하죠. 그럴 때 마늘과 쑥을 100일 동안 먹으면 사람이 되게 해준다고 하셨죠. 그런데 호랑이는 중간에 도망가고 곰이 끝까지 참고 견뎠죠. 곰은 100일 동안 참고 견뎠어요. 쑥과 마늘을 먹으면서요. 그랬더니 당군을 낳게 됐죠. 네, 네, 당군 신화의 스토리가 bear의 뜻 세 가지를 외우는데 완전 딱 찰떡이죠? 네, bear, bull, bone, 곰, 참다, 견디다, 낳다, 출산하다. 꼭 기억해 주세요. 굉장히 많이 나오거든요. several은 some이란 뜻이에요. several years, 몇 년 동안 이렇게 할 때 우리가 some이라는 그냥 some이라고 쓰지 뭐 이렇게 several을 많이 써 라고 하는데 실제로 several이란 단어가 굉장히 많이 나와요. 그래서 some의 뜻이라는 점 몇몇의 라는 뜻으로 기억하면 되고요. pretend는 뭐뭐인 척하다 라고 하는 거죠. 뭐 배가 고픈데 배가 안 고픈 척한다 라든지 아니면 잘난 척한다 뭐 이럴 때 pretend 뭐뭐인 척하다 실제가 아니죠 뭐뭐인 척하는 거는. 그리고 good for nothing good for 원래 good for가 무엇무엇의 조언이잖아요. 그런데 nothing이에요. 아무짝에도 쓸모없는 인간 같으니라고. 네, 네, 더즐리 부인이 자기의 제부 자기 여동생의 남편을 good for nothing husband라고 하죠. 아무짝에도 쓸모없는 남편 같으니라고 할 때 good for nothing 아무짝에 쓸모없는 이라는 표현도 알아두시면 좋고요. shoulder는 몸서리치다예요. 우리가 단어를 외울 때 발음을 해보면서 동작도 같이 해보면 좋아요. 한번 몸서리를 치면서 shoulder, 몸서리를 치면서 shoulder 발음해보면서 몸소리도 한번 쳐보세요. 그러면 shoulder가 쉽게 외워질 거예요. undodglish라는 표현도 나와요. 네, 조엔 작가님이 해리포터를 쓰실 때 굉장히 어휘를 풍부하게 잘 사용하세요. 그리고 새로운 new words, 그야말로 조엔 작가님이 만들어낸 새로운 단어들도 많이 등장한다고 해요. 그래서 영국의 여왕에게 상도 받았대요. 그 여왕님께 받는 상은 우리나라로 치면 대통령 훈장 같은 거죠. 네, 그럴 정도로. 또 사실 우리 조엔 작가님은 전직 국어 선생님이셨어요. 네, 영어 선생님이셨는데요. 영어를 사용하는 국가에서 영어 선생님이면 국어 선생님이신 거죠. 네, 그러니까 영어 교사로 활동을 오랫동안 했기 때문에 사실 문장들을 보면 정말 좋은 문장들이 많고요. 그리고 단어들도 정말 너무너무 잘 골라 쓰셨어요. 그리고 심지어 새롭게 만든 표현들도 많고요. 그리고 마법학교가 등장하는데 사실 조엔 작가님이 학교 교사로 일하셨기 때문에 학교 생활과 연관지어서 뭐 기숙사 생활, 벌점을 주는 거라든지 뭐 교장 선생님, 뭐 교수님들 이런 거 좀 학교 생활에서 본인이 직접 경험했던 그런 직장 생활에 도움을 많이 받았던 것 같기도 해요. 네, 더즐리씨 설명하려다가 더즐리 부부, 더즐리 가족이 나오죠. 그런데 더즐리답지 않다라는 단어를 조엔 작가님이 만들었는데요. 어떻게 만들면 되냐면요. 우리도 누구나 만들 수 있어요. 현정이답지 않다, 현정씨 하면 되겠죠. 는 낫의 의미고요. ish는 형용사로 만드는 표현이에요. 그래서 더즐리라는 명사를 형용사로 만들기 위해서 ish를 붙이고 그리고 더즐리답지 않다, 낫의 의미, 반이어의 표현으로 on을 붙이는 거죠. un이 낫의 의미니까요. 그래서 undodglish, 더즐리답지 않은 이런 표현이 나왔어요. 네, 그리고 정말 모든 영어 원서를 읽을 때 우리가 이 두 가지 구조만 알면 굉장히 리딩을 하는데 도움이 돼요. 모르는 단어가 좀 나왔어도 SVO, 주어, 동사, 목적어, 그 다음에 투부정사가 나오거나 ing가 나오거나 이런 문장 구조가 되게 많거든요. 그러면 주어가 동사 한다, 목적어가 투부정사 하게 하도록 또는 주어가 동사한다, 목적어가 ing를 못하게 하도록 이렇게 기억하면 돼요. to 플러스 동사 원형은 하게 해주는 긍정문이 되는 거죠. 그리고 목적어 다음에 ing, 물론 from이 나올 수도 있고요. from이 생략되는 경우도 있어요. 그럴 경우엔 뭐죠? 못하게 한다. 부정적인 문장이 되는 거죠. 한번 챕터 1에 있는 예문을 가지고 살펴볼까요? This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. 네, this boy는 누굴까요? 네, 해리예요. 해리포터. 해리포터는 another good reason, 또 다른 좋은 이유가 됩니다. 어떤 이유냐고요? For keeping the Potters away. Keep away, keep away 뭔가요? keep은 원래 유지하다인데 away예요. 저 멀리 떨어지게 유지하는 거니까 포터 가족들을 가까이 하지 않고 멀리 하게 되는 좋은 또 하나의 구실이겠죠. 또 하나의 구실, 핑계는 뭐냐면요. They didn't. 그들이, they는 여기서 더즐리 부부죠. They didn't want. 원하지 않기 때문이에요. 주어가 동사한다. 그들이 원하지 않는다. 뭘 원하지 않나요? 더들리가 mixing, ing죠. ing이기 때문에 더들리가 with a child like that, 그와 같은 아이와 어울리는 것, mixing, 섞이는 것을 원치 않기 때문이다. 우리가 영어 문법 시간에 학교에서 학원에서 배울 때 want 목적어 투부정사를 많이 외웠어요. 왜냐면 원합니다. 목적어가 투부정사 하기를요. 대부분 그게 문맥상 자연스럽죠. 나는 원해. 네가 열심히 공부하기를. I want you to study hard. 이렇게 할 수 있겠죠. I want you to study English hard. 나는 네가 영어 공부 열심히 하길 원해. 원한다 하면은 뭔가를 하게 할 때 많이 쓰이기 때문에 그냥 want 목적어 투부정사가 한 90% 이상 많이 나오니까 그렇게 외웠던 건데요. 하지만 want 목적어 ing가 쓰일 수도 있어요. 이것은 틀린 건 아닌데 만약에 문법시험에 한국에서 문법시험에 나오면 투부정사를 쓰라고 하는 자리겠죠. 하지만 우리가 원서를 읽을 때 want 다음에 아니 왜 to mix가 안 나오고 믹식이 나왔어? 라고 매우 당황하실 수 있는데요. 당황하지 마시고요. 주어가 동사한다, 목적어 다음에 ing가 오면 목적어가 ing 하는 걸 못하게 한다 라고 이해하시면 돼요. 그래서 두들리가 섞이는 거, 누구와 함께? A child like that. A child like that은 누구죠? 해리포터죠. 네, 해리죠. 그와 같은 아이, 해리와 mixing, 섞이는 거를 원하지 않기 때문에 그래서 keep away the Potters. The Potters는 포터 가족들이죠. 포터 가족들을 멀리 한다 라고 하는 거죠. 더 플러스하고 성씨를 붙이면 가족들이 돼요. The Gims 하면 김씨 가족들. 저는 성이 가시니까 The Gars 해야 되겠네요. 가시 가족들. The Potters, 포터 가족들. The Dursley 하면 더즐리 가족들. S가 붙어 있는 거죠. 왜냐면 가족은 한 명이 아니라 여러 명이니까요. 네, 그러면 단어와 표현들 좀 간략히 살펴봤는데요. 우리가 영어 원서를 읽을 때 모르는 단어에 너무 집착하실 필요는 없어요. 소설책이기 때문에 계속해서 빠르게 읽어나가면서 모르는 단어들을 있어도 그냥 건너뛸 필요도 있어요. 그래서 나중에는 그 단어들이 계속 나오고요. 제가 꼭 알아야 될 단어들은 정리를 해드릴 테니까요. 그 도움을 받아서 쭉쭉 재밌게 함께 읽어나가면 좋겠어요. 다음에 Read After Me 시간인데요. 챕터 1, 네, 페이지가 좀 많아서 함께 읽느라고 힘들었는데요. 어쨌든 챕터 1 열심히 읽어봤으니까요. 여러분도 큰 소리로 함께 따라 읽어봐요. Chapter 1 The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dudley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dudley was the director of a firm called Groening, which made real. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he did have a very large mustache. Mrs. Dudley was thin and blonde, and had nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent so much of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbor. The Dudleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dudleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody would discover it. They didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dudley's sister, but they hadn't met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dudley pretended she didn't have a sister, because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as un-Dudleyish as it was possible to be. The Dudleys shuddered to think what the neighbors would say if the Potters arrived in the street. The Dudleys knew that Potters had a small son, too, but they had never even seen him. This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Dudley woke up on the dull, gray Tuesday, our story starts. There was nothing about the cloudy sky outside to suggest that strange and mysterious things would soon be happening all over the country. Mr. Dudley hummed as he picked out his most boring tie for work, and Mrs. Dudley gossiped away happily as she wrestled screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large tawny owl fluttered past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dudley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dudley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum and throwing his cereal at the wall. "Little Jack," shouted Mr. Dudley as he left the house. He got into his car and backed out of number 4 Drive. It was on the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar, a cat reading a map. For a second, Mr. Dudley didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of Privet Drive, but there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dudley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back. As Mr. Dudley drove around the corner and up the road, he watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Privet Drive. No, looking at the sign, cats couldn't read maps or signs. Mr. Dudley gave himself a little shake to put the cat out of his mind. As he drove toward town, he thought of nothing except a large order of drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else. As he sat in the usual morning traffic jam, he couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about, people in clocks. Mr. Dudley couldn't bear people who dressed in funny clothes. The get-up you saw on young people, he supposed this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were whispering excited together. Mr. Dudley was enraged to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why, that man had to be older than he was and wearing an emerald green cloak. The nerve of him! But that it struck Mr. Dudley that this was probably some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moved on a few minutes later. Mr. Dudley arrived in the groaning parking lot, his mind back on drills. Mr. Dudley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the ninth floor. If, it, if he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls sweeping past in broad daylight. Though people down in the street did, they pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped overhead. Most of them had never seen an owl even at night time. Mr. Dudley, however, had a perfectly normal, every morning he yelled at 5 different people. He made several important telephone calls and shouted a bit more. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he stretched his legs and walked across the road to buy himself a bun from the bakery. He'd forgotten all about the people in clocks until he passed a group of them next to the baker's. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but they made him uneasy. This bunch were whispering excitedly, too, and he couldn't see a single connecting thing. He was on his way back past them, clutching a large doughnut in a bag. Then he caught a few words of what they were saying. The Porters! That's what I heard. Yes, their son, Harry. Mr. Dudley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back at the whispers, as if he wanted to say something to them, but thought better of it. He dashed back across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at his secretary not to disturb him, seized the telephone, and had almost finished dialing his home number when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down and stroked his mustache, thinking, no, he was being stupid. Porter wasn't such an unusual name. He was sure there were lots of people called Porter who had a son called Harry. Come to think of it, he wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. He'd never even seen the boy. It might have been Harvey or Harold. There was no point in worrying Mrs. Dudley. She always got so upset at any mention of his sister. He didn't blame her if he had a sister like that, but all the same, those people in clocks. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on drill that afternoon, and when he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was still so worried that he walked straight into someone just outside the door. Sorry, he grunted, as the tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. It was a few seconds before Mr. Dudley realized that the man was wearing a violet clock. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked to the ground. On the contrary, his face built into a wide smile, and he said in a squeaky voice that made passersby stare, "Don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing could upset me today. Rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy, happy day." And the old man hugged Mr. Dudley around the middle and walked up. Mr. Dudley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also thought he had been called a muggle. Whatever that was, he was rattled. He hurried to his car and set off home, hoping he was imagining things which he had never hoped before, because he didn't approve imagination. As he pulled into the driveway of number 4, the first thing he saw, and it didn't improve his mood, was a tabby cat it spotted the morning. It was now sitting on his garden wall. He was sure it was the same one. It had the same markings around its eyes. "Shoo!" said Mr. Dudley loudly. The cat didn't move. It just gave him a stunned look. Was this normal cat behavior? Mr. Dudley wondered. Trying to pull himself together, he let himself into the house. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dudley had had a nice, normal day. She told him over dinner all about Mrs. Next door's problem with her daughter and how Dudley had learned a new word, want. Mr. Dudley tried to act normally. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went into the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, bird watchers everywhere have reported that the nation's owls have been behaving very unusually today. Although owls normally hunt at night and are hardly ever seen in daylight, there have been hundreds of sightings of these birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the wolves have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The newscaster allowed himself a grin. Most mysterious, and now over to Jim McGuffin with the weather. Going to be any more showers of owl tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, said the weatherman, I don't know about that, but it's not only the owls that have been acting oddly today. Bears as far apart as Kent, Yorkshire, and Johnny have been phoning in to tell me that instead of the rain I promised yesterday, they've had a downpour of shooting stars. Perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire night early. It's not until next week, first, but I can promise a wet night tonight. Mr. Dudley sat frozen in his armchair. Shooting stars all over Britain? Owls flying by daylight? Mysterious people in clouds all over the place? And a whisper about the poorers. Mrs. Dudley came into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He had to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petunia, dear, you haven't heard from your sister lately, have you? As he had expected, Mrs. Dudley looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretend she didn't have a sister. No, she said sharply. Why? Funny stuff on the news, Mr. Dudley mumbled. Our shooting stars, and there were a lot of funny-looking people in town today. So, snapped Mrs. Dudley. Well, I just thought maybe it was something to do with you. No, her crowd. Mrs. Dudley slipped her teeth through pursed lips. Mr. Dudley wondered whether he dared tell her with her the name Porter. He decided he didn't dare. Instead, he said, as casually he could, "Their son is about Dudley's age now, won't he?" "I suppose so," said Mrs. Dudley stiffly. "What's his name again? Howard, isn't it?" "Harry, nasty, common name, if you ask me." "Oh, yes," said Mr. Dudley, his heart sinking horribly. "Yes, I quite agree." He didn't say another word on the subject as they went upstairs to bed. While Mrs. Dudley was in the bathroom, Mr. Dudley crept to the bedroom window and peered down into the front garden. The cat was still there. It was staring down Privet Drive as though it were waiting for something. Was he imagining things? Could all this have anything to do with the Porters? If it did, if it go out that they were related to Perron, well, he didn't think he could bear it. The Dudley got into bed. Mrs. Dudley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dudley lay awake, turning it all over in his mind. His last comforting thought before he fell asleep was that even if Porters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Dudley. The Porters knew very well what he and Petunia thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how Petunia could get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Mr. Dudley might have been drifting into uneasy sleep, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far corner of Privet Drive. It didn't so much as quiver when a car door slammed on the next street, nor when 2 owls swooped overhead. In fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner. The cat had watching appear so suddenly and silently you'd have thought he'd just popped off the ground. The cat tail twitched and its eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had ever been seen on Privet Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old. Judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck into his back, he was wearing long robes, a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled, buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, and sparkling, a high half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. This man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realize that he had just arrived in a street where everything from his name to his boots was unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak looking for something, but he didn't seem to realize he was being watched because he looked up suddenly at the cat, which was still staring at him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, "I should have known." He found what he was looking for in his inside pocket. It seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flicked it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The next lamp flickered into darkness. 12 times he clicked the put outer until the only lights left on the whole street were two tiny pinpricks in the distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. If anyone looked out of their window now, even beady-eyed Mrs. Dudley, they wouldn't be able to see anything that was happening down on the pavement. Dumbledore slipped the put-outer back inside his cloak and sat up down the street tower number 4, where he sat down on the wall next to the cat. He didn't look at it, but after a moment he spoke to it. "Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall." He turned to smile at the tabby, but it had gone. Instead, he was smiling at a rather severe-looking woman who was wearing square glasses exactly the shape of the markings the cat had around its eyes. She, too, was wearing a cloak, an emerald one. Her black hair was drawn into a tight bun. She looked distinctly ruffled. "How did you know it was me?" she asked. "My dear Professor, I've never seen a cat sit so stiffly." You'd be stiff if you'd been sitting on a brick all day," said Professor McGonagall. "All day? When you could have been celebrating? I must have passed a dozen feasts and parties on my way here." Professor McGonagall sniffed angrily. "Oh, yes, I'm celebrating all right," she said impatiently. You'd think you'd be a bit more careful, but no, even the muggles had noticed something's going on. It was on their news. She jerked her head back on the dusty dark living room window. "I heard it. Flock of owls, shooting star. Well, they are not completely stupid. They were born to notice something shooting star down in Kent. I bet that Rusty, he never had much sense. You can't blame them," said Dumbledore gently. "We've had precious little celebrate for 11 years." "I know that," said Professor McGonagall irritably, "but that's no reason to lose our head. People are being downright careless out on the street in broad daylight, not even dressed in muggle clothes, sweeping rumors." She threw a sharp sideways glance at Dumbledore here, as though hoping he was going to tell her something. But he didn't, so he went on. "A fine thing it would be if, on the very day you know who seems to have disappeared at last, the muggles found out about us all. I suppose he really has gone, Dumbledore." "It certainly seems so," said Dumbledore. "We have much to be thankful for. Would you care for a sherbet lemon?" "A what?" "A sherbet lemon. They are kind of muggle sweet I'm rather fond of." "No, thank you," said Professor McGonagall coldly, as though she didn't think this was the moment for sherbet lemon. "As I say, even if you know who has gone, my dear Professor, surely a sensible person like yourself can call him by his name. All this you know who nonsense. For 11 years I have been trying to persuade people to call him by his proper name, Voldemort." Professor McGonagall flinched, but Dumbledore, who was unsticking to sherbet lemons, seemed not to notice. "It all gets so confusing if we keep saying, 'You know who.'" I have never seen any reason to be frightened of saying Voldemort's name. I know you haven't, said Professor McGonagall. Sounding half exasperate, half admiring. But you're different. Everyone knows you are the only one you know. Oh, all right, Voldemort was frightened of. You flatter me, said Dumbledore calmly. Voldemort had powers I never had. Only because you are too well able to use them. It's lucky it's dark. I haven't brushed it so much since murder from It's lucky it's dark. I haven't brushed so much since Madame Pomfrey told me she liked me my new earmuffs. Professor McGonagall shot a sharp look at Dumbledore and said, "The owls are nothing to the rumors that are flying around. You know what everyone's saying about why he disappeared, about what finally stopped him." It seemed that Professor McGonagall had reached the point she was most anxious to discuss. The real reason she had been waiting on a cold heart all day, for neither as a cat nor as a woman had she fixed Dumbledore with such a piercing stare as she did now. It was plain that whatever everyone was saying, she was not going to believe it until Dumbledore told her it was true. Dumbledore, however, was choosing another sherbet lemon and did not answer. "What they saying?" she pressed on. "Is that last night Voldemort turned up in Godric's Hollow. He went to find the Potters. The rumor is that Lily and James Potter are that they are dead." Dumbledore bowed his head. Professor McGonagall gasped. "Lily and James, I can't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Oh, Albus!" Dumbledore reached out, patted her on the shoulder. I know, he said heavily. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled as she went on. "That's not all. They are saying he tried to kill the Potter's son, Harry. But he couldn't. He couldn't kill that little boy. No one knows why or how. But they are saying that when he couldn't kill Harry Potter, Voldemort's power somehow broke, and that's why he's gone." Dumbledore nodded glumly. It's true, flattered Professor McGonagall. "After all he's done, all the people he's killed, he couldn't kill a little boy? It's just astounding. Of all the things to stop him. But how in the name of heaven did Harry survive? We can only guess," said Dumbledore. "We may never know." Professor McGonagall pulled out a lace handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes beneath the spectacles. Dumbledore gave a great sip as he took a golden watch from his pocket and examined it. It was a very odd watch. It had 12 hands but no number. Instead, little planets were moving around the edge. It must have made sense to Dumbledore, though, because he put it back in his pocket and said, "Hagrid's late. I suppose it was he who told you I'd hear. By the way." "Yes," said Professor McGonagall, "and I don't suppose you are going to tell me why you're here, of all places." "I've come to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. They're the only family he has left now." You can't mean the people who live here?" cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. "Dumbledore, you can't! I've been watching them all day. You couldn't find two people who are less like us, and they've got this son. I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for Switch. Harry Potter, come and live here." "It's the best place for him," said Dumbledore firmly. "His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he's older. I've written them a letter." "A letter?" repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting back down on the oar. "Really, Dumbledore, you think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He will be famous, a legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day. In future there will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Exactly, said Dumbledore, looking very serious over the top of his half-moon glasses. It would be enough to turn any boy's head. Famous before he can walk talk. Famous for something he won't even remember. Can't you see how much better off he will be? Growing away from all that until he's ready to take it. Professor McGonagall opened the mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, "Yes, yes, you are right, of course. But how is the boy getting here, Dumbledore?" She eyed his cloak suddenly as though she thought he might be hiding Harry underneath it. "Hagrid's bring him." "You think it wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as this?" "I would trust Hagrid with my life," said Dumbledore. "I'm not saying his heart isn't the right place," said Professor McGonagall grudgingly. "But you can't pretend he's not careless. He does tend to—" "What was that?" A low, rumbling sound had broken the silence around them. It grew steadily louder as they looked up and down the street for some sign of a headlight. It swelled to a roar as they both looked up at the sky, and a huge motorbike fell out of the air and landed on the road in front of them. If the motorbike was huge, it was nothing to the man sitting astride it. He was almost twice as tall as a normal man and at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed, and so wild. Long tangles of black hair and beard hid most of his face. He had hands the size of Dustin Reed, and his feet in their leather boots were like baby dolphins. In his vast, muscular arm he was holding the bundle of blankets. "Hagrid!" said Dumbledore, sounding relieved. "At last! And where did you that motorbike?" "Borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore, sir," said the giant, climbing carefully up the motorbike as he spoke. Young Sirius Black lent in me. "I've got him, sir. No problem, there?" "No, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him out all right before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as we was flying over Bristol." Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, was a baby boy fast asleep. Under a tuft of jet black hair over his forehead they could see a curiously shaped cut, like a bolt of lightning. "Is that where?" whispered Professor McGonagall. "Yes," said Dumbledore. He'll have that scar forever. Couldn't you something about it, Dumbledore?" "Even if I could, I wouldn't. Scar can come in useful. I have one myself about my left knee, which is a perfect map of the London Underground. Well, give him here, Hagrid. We'd better get this over with." Dumbledore took Harry in his arm and turned toward Dudley's house. "Could I say good-bye to him, sir?" asked Harry. He bent his great shaggy head over Harry and gave him what must have been a very whispery kiss. Then suddenly Harry let out a howl like a wounded dog. "Shh!" hissed Professor McGonagall. "You'll wake the muggles." So sorry," sobbed Harry, taking out a large spotted handkerchief and burying his face in it. "But I can't stand it, really, and James Dad, poor little Harry, off to live and muggles." "Yes, yes, it's all very sad, but get a grip on yourself, Hagrid, or we'll be found," Professor McGonagall whispered, patting Hagrid Ginger on the arm as Dumbledore stepped over the low garden wall and walked to the front door. He laid Harry gently on the doorstep, took a letter out of his cloak, tucked it inside Harry's blanket, and then came back to the other two. For a full minute the three of them stood and looked at the little bundle. Hagrid's shoulders shook. Professor McGonagall blinked furious and, twinkling light that usually shone from Dumbledore's eyes, seemed to have gone out. Well, said Dumbledore finally, that's that. We've no business staying here. We may as well go and join the celebration. Yeah, said Hagrid in a very muffled voice. I'd best get this bike away. Good night, Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, sir. Wiping his streaming eyes on his jacket sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto the motorbike and kicked the engine into life. With a roar it rose into the air and off into the night. I shall see you soon, I expect, Professor McGonagall, said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her nose in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner, he stopped and took out the silver put-outer. He clicked it once and 12 balls of light sped back to their street lamps so that Privet Drive glowed suddenly orange and he could make out a tabby cat slinking around the corner at the other end of the street. He could just see the bundle of blankets on the step of number 4. Good luck, Harry, he murmured. He turned on his heel, and with a swish of his cloak he was gone. A breeze ruffled the neat patches of Privet Drive, which lay silent and tidy under an inky sky, the very last place you'd expect astonishing thing to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blanket without waking up. One small hand closed on the ladder beside him. He slept on, not knowing he was special, not knowing he was famous, not knowing he would be woken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dudley's scream as she opened the front door to put out the milk bottle, nor that he would spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by Cousin Dudley. He couldn't know that at this very moment, people meeting in spirit all over the country were holding up their glasses and saying in a hushy voice, "To Harry Potter, the boy who lived." 네, 지금까지 챕터 1, The Boy Who Lived 함께 읽어봤는데요. 큰 소리로 함께 따라 읽어봤나요? 네, The Boy Who Lived는요, 어떤 한 소년인데, 살았던 소년이라고 해석하기 쉬운데, 살아남은 소년이라고 문맥상 챕터 1을 전체적으로 읽어보면 해리포터가 엄마 아빠는 그 악당 볼트모어에 의해서 죽임을 당하거든요. 그런데 나이 어린 해리만 살아남았고, 그리고 그 해리에게 힘을 썼던 악당이 오히려 힘이 사라지고, 그래서 악당이 기운이 빠져서 도망을 치는, 사라져버리는 사건이 일어나요. 마법의 세계에선 엄청난 사건이죠. 그래서 The Boy Who Lived, Harry Potter 하면 해리포터만 살아남았기 때문에 살아남은 소년이라고 번역을 하더라고요. 그리고 챕터 1의 이야기는 이제 해리포터를 양육해줄 이모부 이름은 버논이고 이모는 페투니아인데요. 페투니아는 꽃 이름이죠. 네, 페투니아 이모하고 버논 이모부, 그리고 사촌인 더들리에 대해서 간략하게 설명이 되어 있는데요. 굉장히 좀 해리의 인생이 힘들게 될 것 같은 그런 암시를 주고 있어요. 그리고 덤블도어 교장 선생님하고 맥거널 교수님하고 해그리드 선생님까지 다 등장을 하는데요. 챕터 1에서 영화를 본 분들은 어떤 내용인지 잘 알겠지만 저처럼 처음 책으로 읽는 사람은 뭔가 챕터 1부터 우리 JK 작가님이 정말 공을 들여서 책을 썼구나 그런 느낌이 있어요. 왜냐하면 한 문장 한 문장 묘사하는 내용이 굉장히 재밌게 생생하게 그려지고 있는 것 같아요. 그럼 thank you for listening. Catch you later. 다음 시간에 챕터 2 The Vanishing Glass, 엄청 흥미진진한 챕터 2 가지고 돌아올게요. Bye bye. See you.